Tell me, just lay it on, take as much time as you need, kind of your experience, kind of being in that space, and then obviously kind of crossing into the more in the independent space. Let the audience know of the difference, the benefits, the highs, the lows, just everything that you've been a part of.
Right. I worked for DC Comics for 20 some odd years altogether. When I first started out working for the company, it was before AOL bought Warner Brothers. But when I first got into comics, they wouldn't trust me and hire me for interior pages because I was just a young kid. And so I ended up being shuffled to the licensing department. A lot of times now you'll see a Batman t-shirt or something. It's something I drew almost 20 years ago, and they just keep reusing the same image. At the time, the money seemed good. From there, I got some issues on Batman. I worked on Under the Hood when they brought Jason Todd back. They made so much money off that book. And from there, I ended up working with people like Brad Meltzer on Justice League, Michael Straczynski on Superman Earth 1. That was like knocking out of the park. I think we were on the New York Times bestsellers list for 40 some weeks book. Then I created a lot of the Red Lanterns that you see in video games like Justice League and Justice 2, Deathstar, Belize, Scale. I basically created all the Red Lanterns except for Atrocitus. And they get around in a lot of Lego games. It's interesting to create something on paper and then see it worked around into so many areas like superhero girls or Legos, even some video game like Injustice 2. And then there for a while, I left DC Comics and I worked with Legendary, the movie studio. I worked with them with Max Brooks and Mark Waid. I was working mainly with Thomas Tull, who was the owner of the studio at the time. Back when they were doing the third Dark Knight movie, working with a movie studio, I end up sitting in conversations and talking to the same people that make the movies like Pacific Rim, and working with Max Brooks from World War Z. So I was working with people from all different backgrounds, and I could really see the Hollywood dynamics. Generally, I'm a comic guy. It was interesting those 3 years I worked with Legendary. And what was interesting to me is I started to look back and I'm like, I don't think if Hollywood controlled comics, we would have Spider-Man, we would have Green Goblin, that type of dynamic, that cool visuals that came from comics. And that's when I knew everything was going to go wrong in comics, because Hollywood was really going to come in and they were going to start trying to manipulate these characters and tailor them to being more fashionable for either actors and agents. You could tell they couldn't make source material comics. We're seeing that more and more as these studios take over Marvel and DC Comics. I don't think a Jack Kirby could come out today. I don't even know if a Frank Miller could come out today and make a book. And basically, I realized studios were invading the comic system for the worse. It's like when you put something in an ecosystem, a new animal, a new predator, it can throw off the whole balance of everything. And I felt like that's where we're at with comics today. So the last thing I was mainly working on with DC Comics was Metal Men. And then thinking back, it's like over a course of a few months, everything went to shit.